calling us, I should say, unpatriotic and irresponsible. In his new tweet storm coming after he revealed that he met with New York Times publisher A.G. Sulzberger, saying they had a good and interesting discussion about fake news and how the term morphed into the phrase enemy of the people, Sulzberger released a statement saying he warned the president his language is not just divisive, it could lead to violence against journalists. The president responded with a series of tweets saying he, quote, won't allow our great country to be sold out by the anti-Trump haters in the dying newspaper industry. Back around the table, Julie, you're the representative here from the New York Times. I have to say that your publisher is one of my new heroes because it isn't the fake news. Okay, that's bad, but that's really bad. But the enemy of the people is dangerous.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, this was, let's not forget, was supposed to be an off-the-record meeting that the president chose to divulge and sort of gives the lie to what he often talks about, you know, made-up sources, made-up conversations that never happened. This is an example of one of these things that, you know, was supposed to be a discussion between the publisher and the president, and he chose to disclose it. But be that as it may, they did talk about fake news. They talked about, the president said that, you know, actually some foreign countries have banned fake news, and A.G. Sulzberger, our publisher, pointed out that actually those are autocratic countries where they're actually trying to stifle dissent. And he mentioned, and I think he came to the meeting intending to raise the point that through this rhetoric of enemy of the people, this is given rise to a new wave of threats against journalists. And then actually, he told the president, you know, a lot of us have had to hire armed security 24/7 if we didn't already have it. The president actually expressed surprise that more journalism organizations didn't have that to begin with. But this was, you know, I think that this was an opportunity for the president maybe to air some of his grievances. A.G. Sulzberger used it as an occasion to share with the president what the impact has been on the journalism industry, on journalists individually, and what it could be on the country more broadly.
And he didn't obviously learn anything from it, the president, because this weekend he tweeted criticizing reporters for covering the inner workings of government. Well, that's what reporters are supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, that is what reporters are supposed to do in any society, but particularly when you're not in an autocratic society, to your point, where you are, you know, you have the shoe on your head saying you can't report on anything. Thank you, the New York Times, for doing that. Thank you for watching and joining us on Inside Politics. Wolf starts right now.
Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer. It's 1 p.m. here in Washington. Thanks so much for joining us. Very soon, President Trump takes the microphone, takes questions from the news media. Is appearing today with Italy's visiting prime minister over at the White House. It'll be the first time reporters will have the chance to question the president since his rash of Twitter attacks against the special investigator Robert Mueller. Among a host of tweets was this one, quote, "There is no collusion. The Robert Mueller rigged witch hunt, headed now by 17 angry Democrats, was started by a fraudulent dossier paid for by Crooked Hillary and the DNC. Therefore, the witch hunt is an illegal scam." Close quote. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, the president now taking great pains to call Robert Mueller's investigation a rigged witch hunt. And he names Mueller specifically as part of that, that evil doing, if you will. We have to expect that the president probably will be asked a question about this when he answers reporters' questions coming up fairly soon.
I think that's right, Wolf, and I think even if the president decides to call on friendly conservative media during this upcoming press conference with the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte in the Rose Garden in a couple of hours from now, within the next couple of hours, that it's very likely the president will be asked at least why he is being so pointed and going after Mueller by name in these tweets this morning. Of course, this is sort of a rapid-fire effect that we're seeing from the White House all morning long. Not only is the president going after the special counsel's investigation, you're also seeing Rudy Giuliani, the president's outside attorney, going after the investigation and talking about all sorts of things in that wide-ranging interview with Alisyn Camerota on New Day earlier this morning, when Rudy Giuliani was essentially saying if there was collusion, there's nothing wrong with collusion. Wolf, I think one critical question that could be asked of the president at this upcoming news conference is that, well, if there's nothing wrong with collusion, why has the president been saying for the last 12 months or so, 18 months or so, that there is no collusion? And so they are sort of, contradicting one another in that regard. I tried to ask the president about some of this earlier, just a couple of minutes ago, when the president was with the Italian prime minister in the Oval Office just a short while ago. The president did not take any questions from reporters. He did compliment the prime minister. I think that's a sneak preview of coming attractions in terms of what we'll hear from the president at this press conference with the Italian prime minister. He did compliment the Italian prime minister on his immigration policy. The Italian prime minister has also been tough on immigration inside his own country. Of course, not to the extent that the Trump administration has been in terms of taking children away from their parents and so on that we've seen down on the border. That's that shameful situation that's been unfolding over the last couple of months. That has not been duplicated, obviously, in other places around the world. But the president was very complimentary of the Italian prime minister on his position on immigration when they met just a few moments ago inside the Oval Office. Wolf, we tried to ask questions of the president, and one thing that we should note, and this is becoming something that I've noticed and my colleagues have noticed with more frequency in these sort of Oval Office spray opportunities, the wranglers, the aides who work for the president, are nearly shouting at the top of their lungs over top of reporters to make sure that the president's questions, the questions from reporters to the president, can't be heard. I literally had an aide next to my ear nearly screaming within the last several minutes when the president was with the Italian prime minister behind, not behind closed doors, but in the Oval Office. But it's an example of just how hard they are trying to keep reporters from asking the president questions. Obviously, they can't do that at this news conference coming up in the Rose Garden with the Italian prime minister, although you may see the president, because of the content of the news that we're seeing right now, there is so much in the news about the Mueller investigation, Paul Manafort, Rudy Giuliani, and so on. The president may be tempted to call on somebody in the friendly conservative media to lob a softball at him. We've seen them try to do that before, Wolf.
It's one of these Q&A sessions, 2 questions from American journalists, 2 questions from Italian journalists. Is that right?
That's right. And obviously the president, at some of these 2+2s, one thing that we've noticed is at the very end of them, he'll be tempted. This happened at Chequers with the British Prime Minister Theresa May. I asked him a question after they were wrapped up taking questions from both sides. And so you may see an attempt from reporters in the Rose Garden to do that as well this afternoon. But obviously, Wolf, when you look at the tweets coming from the president this morning, when you see what Rudy Giuliani said and has been saying over the last 24 hours on all sorts of shows, including CNN's New Day, the Mueller investigation is obviously very, very much on their minds right now. And they're just saying just about anything at this point to try to, I guess, create some uncertainty as to what the special counsel's office is doing. With the president and his outside attorney almost contradicting one another in the last 12 hours in terms of his tweets and what Giuliani's been saying on the morning talk shows, Wolf.
Jim Acosta at the White House. We'll have live coverage of that Q&A session coming up with the visiting Italian Prime Minister. Stand by for that. In the meantime, the president once again firing off very angry tweets about the Russia probe and escalating his personal attacks against Robert Mueller, the special counsel, calling him out by name. But there are some glaring factual errors in his tweets. Let's go to our politics reporter and editor-at-large, Chris Cillizza. He's joining us now with a fact check. What are you finding out, Chris?
Okay, well, let's get right to it. We are talking about these 3 tweets sent in the last 24 hours in rapid succession about Bob Mueller. So here's our first. The Robert Mueller rig witch hunt headed now by 17, increased from 13, including an Obama White House lawyer, angry Democrats. That's a mouthful. Your English teacher wouldn't love it. It's also not true. Here's Mueller's team that we know about. 13 have at one point in their lives been registered as Democrats for no party affiliation, or the party affiliation wasn't available. Worth noting, but this is also worth noting. You recognize that guy? That's Robert Mueller, the guy running the probe. Appointed by George W. Bush, a Republican president, to be the director of the FBI. Appointed by Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, to run the special counsel, and a Republican in his private life. Both of these men are Republicans. This is the boss. This is the second in command when you're talking about this probe. Obviously, Jeff Sessions has recused himself. Let's go to the next one. Okay, we're picking up here. This probe was started by a fraudulent dossier paid for by Crooked Hillary and the DNC. Okay, good false label there. Let's go and tell you why. Okay, what we know is that the Steele dossier, Christopher Steele, former British spy, was not the genesis of the FBI counterintelligence investigation. What was? That's George Papadopoulos over there in the sunglasses, former foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump. He met with an Australian diplomat in Britain, at which he bragged that the Russians had dirt on Hillary Clinton. That was passed along to American intelligence officials. The FBI launched a probe that became the Mueller probe. Okay, keep going. Therefore, the witch hunt is an illegal scam. Put the capitalization, odd though it may be, aside. It's number one, it's not illegal. That's not here. It's not illegal. 2 federal judges have ruled that Bob Mueller has the right to proceed against Paul Manafort, former campaign chairman for the Trump campaign. So it's not illegal. As for it being a scam, this is just some of what's come out of the Mueller investigation. 191 criminal charges, 32 individuals charged, 3 companies, and I'll note, Wolf, 5 people have already pled guilty, including National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and Deputy Campaign Chairman Rick Gates. Okay, so these are people cooperating. Okay, let's keep going. Is Robert Mueller ever going to release his conflicts of interest with respect to President Trump? Great third person there by Donald Trump, including the fact that we have a very nasty and contentious business relationship. Okay, let's just jump forward here. First of all, the Department of Justice, which, by the way, is the Justice Department